Diana, do you know what people who sleep or are dating married people say? Siwanga, uyu siwanga. It's a lovely song, actually. Vai Chisona, don't for we look what Tamba, vai Chisona, don't for we look what Tamba, vai Chala. All right, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Ah, no. There we go. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And cue the applause. Brilliant. I hope you are having a lovely day. What we do on this podcast, we take a look at some of the biggest news stories in our country, Zambia, and sometimes, if need be, we take a look at the rest of the world. My name is Dingindaba Jonah Buyoya, and I'm your host. So let's start off. Let's take a look at what's coming up. What shall we be talking about today? Well, the Patriotic Front's Mumbi Phiri is out of the chooks, and she's spent about a fortnight because she was arrested on the 7th of January 2024. 2025, sorry. We're still getting out of it because it's only 22 days in so far. But she's been released today. We'll be getting into details of that. And because of her release, there's some members of parliament who are asking her to sue the state. They say that she needs to sue the state. The state is doing this for the second time, and they are wrongly accusing her, and they're asking her to sue the state. We'll get into detail into that as well. But there's floods like almost everywhere right now. And I guess that's the thing about this heavy rain. It's come with its own trail of destruction, despite it being good for the country, especially after what we've been going through. But there's also the Auditor General's report on Constituency Development Fund, which can only be described as being shocking. We'll spend a bit of time on this because it's of utmost importance for all of us as citizens to talk about these things. Why not get into it? Let's start off with the whole shebang. I'm abusing this whole applause thing because it gives me the energy and the euphoria to get the job done and done well. The Patriotic Front's Central Committee member, Mumbi Phiri, has been released by police in Kawambwa constituency after being initially charged with aggravated robbery and non-bailable offense. Ms. Phiri has instead been charged with conduct likely to cause the breach of peace, and she admitted to the offense and paid a fine of 89 kwacha. Luapula Province Police Commissioner Mwalayuyi has told Diamond News that the police acted on the instructions of the Director of Public Prosecutions, who declined to pursue the aggravated robbery case due to insufficient evidence. Ms. Phiri had previously been accused of stealing cash and personal property.
After spending 2 weeks in police custody on charges of aggravated robbery, Patriotic Front PF member of the Central Committee, Mumbi Phiri, has walked free. The 56-year-old politician had been facing an unbailable charge of aggravated robbery, which carries a maximum sentence of 15 years imprisonment upon conviction. In Zambia, aggravated robbery is classified as an unbailable offense, meaning Ms. Phiri had to remain in custody while awaiting the resolution of her case. However, the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP Gilbert Phiri, declined to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence. In a letter to the police, the DPP instructed that the charges be dropped to avoid what he described as a risk of embarrassment for the state in court.
You know, as police, we follow the instructions from the DPP in terms of prosecution. Yeah. And once he told us that Mumbi Phiri's case had no merit, so we had no option but to follow those instructions. released her on Thursday, and then we followed up by charging her for conduct like to cause a breach of peace, for which she has paid the admission of guilt.
Earlier, before her release, Ms. Phiri raised concerns about alleged human rights violations during her time in custody.
I've stayed in cells for 2 weeks where there's no toilet, I haven't bathed. What can you call this if you can't call me being abused? And we have the rapporteur from the United Nations, which Zambia is a signatory to. According to Article 57 of the Mandela Rule, I'm not even supposed to be brought this far, but the laws are being broken and people are keeping quiet. This is my appeal. We don't have the human rights.
Meanwhile, PF faction Vice President Given Luwinda had called for her immediate release, arguing that she had committed no crime.
You had no shame whatsoever to treat a female citizen like that. An innocent citizen. One was not committed any offense. Even just reading the statement by the complainant shows you that they were not linking Mumbi Phiri at all to any crime.
Ms. Phiri's case raises questions about the process of justice in Zambia, as it remains unclear whether she will seek legal redress for arrest and detention. Jairus Jonya, Tamo News.
All right. So from the onset, we've been saying this, and I'm one of the people that said this, and I don't regret having said this, that this was obviously kind of ridiculous to charge her for the theft of a phone. And what is this, 20,000 kwacha? So that was kind of ridiculous from the onset. And we know that different organizations came out also to speak about how ridiculous this was. It just wasn't making much sense. And it wasn't making much sense even from the context in which the Zambia Police Service reported it, because they said that she was in the presence of, basically they said she was there when it was happening. That's the best description I can give for this. They were basically saying she was there when all of this was happening. So very unfortunate that it ended this way, and she went into the jail cell for an offense that clearly she wasn't supposed to be there for. But also, it's kind of an awakening moment for us to start talking even more about the law enforcement agencies. And at this point, I'm talking about the Zambia Police Service, because the president has spoken about this. When he was employing a new team of people, the president spoke about how the Zambia police should not arrest people without proper investigation, without having a proper dossier of evidence. But clearly, the Zambia police has continued on their path, which is very unfortunate, because you would expect that we should be making progress, especially that the president has explicitly made himself clear on this. But female members of parliament from the Patriotic Front have urged Madam Mumbi Phiri to sue the state for alleged wrongful detention on aggravated robbery charges. The Patriotic Front's chair lady and Kalulushi member of parliament Kampamba Mulenga, joined by other members, has described Mrs. Phiri's arrest as persecution, and her detention especially. The Kalulushi member of parliament is calling on the United Nations Special Rapporteur on freedom of opinion and expression to take an interest in this case and weigh in, basically, in all of this.
In a passion and resolute move, female members of parliament from the Patriotic Front have gathered to publicly urge Mumbi Phiri, a prominent party member, to take legal action against the state for what they claim was wrongful detention. The MPs have condemned the circumstances surrounding Phiri's arrest and subsequent detention, asserting that it was not only an abuse of power but a direct violation of her rights. This is after the DPP ordered for her release due to insufficient evidence linking her to the case of aggravated robbery. Patriotic Front Chair Lady, who is also Kalulushi Member of Parliament, Kampamba Mlenga, says she should sue the state urging the UN envoy to also take keen interest.
I want to address Madam Rapporteur for the UN to look at issues like Mumbi Phiri. We are alive that, yes, she has been released almost a few minutes ago, but the dent and the danger of her being incarcerated for the last 2 weeks was uncalled for. And we are told that the issue of the letter going missing, first and foremost, if the DPP had written almost a week ago and the line of administration for her release was not adhered to, this is abuse. And my suggestion to her to stop all this ridicule is just to sue, because first and foremost, just even her incarceration, taking her from Lusaka into Kawambwa is really uncalled for.
This has been described as persecution, and the alleged silence of women is worrying.
Silence by even the Minister of Justice, who is also a female. We hoped that after a female has been given a position of a Minister of Justice, things would get better. Unfortunately, her mouth is sealed. She can't even open her mouth, despite her being one of the women who was so vocal. I've been talking to the president that you cannot treat women in such a way. Now I make an appeal to you as the First Lady. May you please have mercy over this country. May we heal as a nation.
And meanwhile, UPND Lusaka Youth Chairperson Anderson Banda says the presence of the UN envoy is evident that the government is not hiding anything.
As the issues which people are debating largely. And I want to say that for the first time in the history of this country and the world at large, UPND government could be the first government to invite human rights activists from United Nations to come in the country and interact with stakeholders and prove for themselves the environment which is here, especially to do with rights of people and freedoms.
With the eyes of both national and international observers now on the case, the MP's words echoes across, setting the stage for potential legal battle that could become a defining moment in the struggle for political fairness and the protection of human rights in Zambia. Victoria Kayeye Yambani, Diamond News.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk much about that because it's pretty self-explanatory what they're trying to do there and what they're trying to achieve. It's well within her rights, I guess, for her to do that. And if she decides to go through with it, we will be right here to give you details. Let's go to Kabanana, where 11 families displaced by flooding in Lusaka's Kabanana West have been evacuated to safety. The families now residing in tents at Chipata school grounds are among those affected since the onset of the rainy season. But there's more families that have come forward seeking assistance as the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit continues to deliver food and non-food items to these victims.
3 weeks ago, families here were living in flooded houses as a result of flash floods here in Kabanana West. But now, those families have been relocated here at Chipata Primary School grounds, where they're temporarily here as a result of government aid to the families. Out of those 55, about 11 of them were assessed to be severely affected, hence they received relief from DMMU. I get to interact with the family members on how their stay has been thus far.
If it was at night, things would have been worse because water in my house was up to my neck level. I am thankful to God, really thankful that it was daytime and my family was preserved. Things are really hard. We have slept well. Police security in the area were on the lookout for criminals that wanted to take advantage of us, and they were dealt with. Police did a great job. Water levels were up to my knees in my house, that I was really lost for words and where to turn to, because the situation was really bad. Despite my condition, I had to get up and go to register my name to show that my situation was really severe, and I was accommodated as among people who needed relief.
According to the Disaster and Mitigation Unit GMMU, over 339 households have been affected by flash floods since the onset of rains. These are in 3 constituencies, namely Kanyama, Mandevu and Matero constituency. Here in Kabanana west of Mandevu constituency, over 55 families have been affected. However, from that 55, 11 have been severely affected, hence have been sheltered here on the playground of Chipata Primary School. Behind me is sheltering about 3 families. There are other tents that are accommodating 1 family, others 2 families. This is just a temporary solution that government says has aided in the relief of the families affected severely by flash floods. For now, this is what they are calling home. For some that have had households submerged in water, for many, this is quite a relief from what they are used to. My name is Elfimale Champande for Diamond News.
So it is a sigh of relief, but when you look at the tents that they're living in the midst of these heavy downpour, which, by the way, is not easing up in the next few days, because the projection by the Zambia Meteorological Department says that this is something that we are going to be seeing over the next few days. For those of you that are in Lusaka, you've experienced this even as late as today. It's been raining quite heavily. So we have to kind of feel for these people that they are in tents as it rains violently in Lusaka. And you can't help but just sympathize with these. Can't help but sympathize with these. Justin calling me. Right? He knows we're filming. I find it really strange that he's called at this time. But anyway, still talking about this. 2 major bridges, along with several crossing points, have been damaged following heavy rain in the district. Gwembe District Commissioner Kilian Chikandula has revealed that the destructive floods have severely disrupted communities, with school children among the worst affected, as they are now completely cut off. And in response to the situation, his office, in collaboration with the Gwembe Town Council Engineering Department, has decided to engage beneficiaries of the Cash for Work program to repair the damaged crossing points as a temporary and immediate solution.
This is the aftermath of the heavy downpour experienced yesterday in Gwembe district of Southern Province. Several infrastructures have been damaged, including bridges. Gwembe District Commissioner Kilian Chikandula has visited various areas to appreciate the challenge and announced that the 2 major bridges, including several crossing points, have been damaged.
Because it was last week when we had another flood. So we went around just to check the extent that the bridges have been damaged. So we are together with the Director of Works, who promised to use those who are working for Cash for Work, because some places can be repaired temporarily. But after some time, I'm sure we are going to engage 1 contractor who is going to work on them. So far, bridges that have been reported are 2, one along Sompan Road, after branching from Gwembe Paper Road. Yes, that one has been done with no vehicle can cross. That one is along Bondo Road at Bunyete. That is a bridge before Bunyete. It was completely cut off. This one is a public cry, because most of the crops that are planted along the streams were washed away. So some were demanding to be given some more seeds so they can plant, because time is too there.
Meanwhile, sad faces were expressed this morning when some of the farmers checked their maize fields in trying to see if there are few crops that survived. I'm just trying to check if there can be those that can survive. Otherwise, there's nothing. We anticipate a lot of hunger. Hope is lost. After what seemed was going to be a bumper harvest for these farmers, have completely been swept away by the heavy current, and farmers are devastated. There's going to be a lot of hunger because of these floods, because we're not going to harvest what we expected. The district commissioners, however, assured farmers of government intervention. After camp officers across the district collects all the information of how many farmers have been affected. Helga Chibwe, Damo News, in Southern Province.
But one of the things you see about what's going on in Gwembe is that people have lost crop, like quite terribly lost crop. And it reminds me because I once went to Gwembe to cover a story of hunger. There was hunger in Gwembe. This was the drought of 2019, I think, 2018, 2019. And we spent a couple of days there. People were eating roots. And I guess it's the fact that Gwembe is a valley, so they are impacted by extreme weather patterns, which is very sad. And hopefully we can avert the possibility of hunger in that area in the near future. And he started eating it. Well, I remember when I went there, there was one incident. Well, one of the most common things actually was people would now start to eat their livestock, but you can imagine because they didn't have milli meal, which is a staple food. So they would eat. They would just eat the. They would eat the goat or the cow, just like that, and. There was a root. They were calling it yipama. It's a root. It's a tasteless root, but would kill the hunger. So basically, but poisonous too. So they have to cook it for about 18 hours. So they have to be removing, spilling out the water and then cooking it and spilling out the water so that toxins can get out of it. It was very sad. It was a very sad episode to experience. But let's come back to talking about the Constituency Development Fund. German Ambassador to Zambia, Dr. Ann Wagner Mitchell, has described the lapses highlighted in the summary of the recently published Auditor General's report on the 2023 Constituency Development Fund as both shocking and disheartening. Speaking at the National Consultation on the Anti-Corruption Act No. 3 of 2013, Dr. Wagner Mitchell stated that while these lapses may not necessarily stem from deliberate acts of corruption, they underscore the urgent need for improved financial management practices. And she has also emphasized the importance of revisiting the Anti-Corruption Act to clearly outline the governance and powers of the Anti-Corruption Commission, ACC. And she argued that this would enable the ACC and its board to function independently and strengthen its role as an institution providing checks and balances to curb misconduct. And she's also welcomed the appointment of a new ACC board and a Director General.
The German ambassador to Zambia, Dr. Ann Wagner Mitchell, has described the findings in the 2023 Auditor General's report on the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, as shocking and a wake-up call for better financial management. This comes as government and stakeholders commit to strengthening anti-corruption measures. Dr. Mitchell spoke during a national consultation on the Anti-Corruption Act in Lusaka.
Summary of the Auditor's General report on the implementation of CDF 2023. What I read was distressing and sad. The amounts of CDF that were channeled to contractors who never delivered goods or services they were paid for, to students who had received CDF bursaries and never reported to their education institutions, To beneficiaries who never paid back their CDF soft loans, these amounts were shocking. While these lapses may not all be conscious corruption, they illustrate that much more has to be done to achieve proper financial management. We welcome the fact that last week a new board for the Anti-Corruption Commission and a new Director General of the Commission was appointed. However, the developments which led to the dissolution of the board and the resignation of the former Director General of the Commission probably illustrate that the current governance structure of the Commission is imperfect.
Corruption undermines the rule of law, erodes democratic institutions, and weakens citizens' trust in their government.
With calls for stronger governance and accountability growing louder, the spotlight remains on public institutions to ensure public funds serve their intended purpose.
The UPNP administration remains resolute in ensuring that corruption is eradicated from our public and private institutions and society at large.
As we discuss the necessary updates to our anti-corruption law today, we must consider our role as stewards of accountability and integrity.
The Anti-Corruption Commission Act No. 3 of 2012 is being reviewed to fortify Zambia's fight against corruption. Best Jerry, Diamond News.
Yeah, so we need to talk a little bit about this Auditor General's report, and I'll just highlight some of the findings of the report. And of course, the Auditor General's report is going to focus on the lapses because it's an auditor, and they're just trying to see how best they can improve the process. But they've highlighted, this is the CDF use of 2023, which is showing weaknesses in financial management, governance, and project execution. Some of the examples that you might want to take note of is the fact that there was widespread non-enforcement of the CDF Act, which was enacted in 2018, and the guidelines that was enacted in 2022, and the lapses have resulted in poor project implementation, mismanagement of funds, and a lack of transparency in the administration of the fund across the 156 constituencies. For example, out of 7.5 billion kwacha that was allocated, only 3.9 was spent, leaving behind 3.5 billion kwacha unspent, which is quite shocking given that Zambia is in dire need of development and resources. There was the utilization of community projects. It was only 42%, not even 50%, 42%. Bursaries utilization was at 56%, but there's a lot of uneducated children out there. Speaking of bursaries also, there were children, students, pupils that did not show up at all for school. There were delays in project execution. Many projects from 2022 were spilling over into 2023 and beyond. We talk about over 3,266 projects were carried forward from 2022. And again, by the end of 2023, 143 of these projects had not been implemented. In 2023, 2,793 projects were approved. Only 1,109 were completed. 767 were in progress. 917 remained untouched by the end of the year. Goodness me. Goodness me. Soft loans that were provided to beneficiaries, but recovery efforts were also ridiculous. There was a total of 570 million kwacha that was dispersed, but only 27 million kwacha was recovered. 4.7%. Councils did not also implement a surcharge because there's a 2% penalty that is supposed to be added for delayed payments. They did not enforce that. The bursary component of the Constituency Development Fund was intended to support secondary and skills education, was riddled with inefficiencies. 1.8 million kwacha was paid for 56 pupils and 461 students who never reported for school at their institutions. This is money that was paid. And I agree with the question that's being asked on whether or not these were even students in the first place. Goods and services procurement was ridiculous. It had a lot of delays and quality issues. There was, for example, issue of desks, undelivered desks, some that were defective. And these are some of the issues that are highlighted in the Auditor General's report. So very, very sad, but hopefully it's a learning curve, and we can find solutions to some of these challenges that we're witnessing with the Constituency Development Fund. But anyway, that is a wrap. We keep it nice and simple, short. Keep it short and sweet. Keep it short and sweet. Those are the stories making news in our beautiful country. We'll continue updating you and adding context to them. And you can always be a part of this. And goodness me, what a day.